Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and I want to welcome you to day 154 of Humanity Rising. Humanity Rising is an initiative of Ubiquity University and over 350 partnering organizations from around the world that have come together during this extraordinary pandemic to provide a daily open space so that people can gather and simply share what they're feeling, how they're navigating, what they're working on, what strategic enhancements are in order to ensure that the world beyond the pandemic is more abundant, resilient, healthy, and in alignment with natural systems. It's been an extraordinary journey over now 154 days since we launched on the 22nd of May. I just want to note one aspect today from South Korea. 6 months ago, South Korea was vaunted worldwide as among those small handful of countries like New Zealand and Iceland and Taiwan and a few others that had done the right thing and had dealt with the coronavirus in an effective way, kept their rates low. And today, the Minister of Health says they are on the verge of what he calls a medical collapse. And that Seoul, Korea is like a COVID-19 war zone, as everything that they have tried has not succeeded in vanquishing or even significantly ameliorating the virus. And I think it's worth just pausing on this for a moment because Nancy Watt, who you're going to hear in the session in just a little bit, we were talking about this earlier when we were in the green room. And she said that an epidemiologist friend of hers said that this coronavirus deserves our respect. And that's the note with which I would like to begin what is essentially our final week together. We're going to go through this next Friday, the 11th of December, then we're going to take a break. And we'll resume on the 11th of January. But we felt that after the 11th of December, it's really important for us all to, insofar as we can under the pandemic, to gather with our families and look forward to the solstice and just hibernate for a while. And do so at the end of 2020 with respect to what nature has visited upon humankind. If there's one virtue humanity needs to embrace, it's humility in the face of nature and the reality that a small little virus has brought the human race in all of our arrogance, with all of our iPhones, spaceships, military hardware, drones, scientific excellence. A little virus has brought us to our knees, stopped our world, and it needs respect. Because there's no indication that it is going to go away anytime soon. And the vaccine may or may not work. The world will certainly try that. But we're going through an experience, everyone, that is very sobering. And it's calling into question the kinds of qualities we humans need to cultivate, nurture, embrace in every way. And that brings us to the topic that we're going to be talking about today. What are the qualities under current circumstances that we humans need to embrace? You know, we go to school and they fill our minds with knowledge. We memorize massive amounts of information. Is that what we need right now? I don't think so. One reason being, you can get every bit of knowledge you need out of your cell phone. And all the data that's coming out from study after study after study of what are the essential qualities that people need to embody right now in the world. It's not about what you know. It's about who you are. And I would venture that if humanity would concentrate on who we are, what the virtues there might be that we should cultivate and embrace, we would probably do more or as much to build up our immune system as anything that's going to be provided by the vaccine. People in love, people that are healthy in their spirits, people that are vibrant in their souls, have strong immune systems. So today we're going to contemplate one virtue, one quality in particular: adaptation, that has become singularly seminal since the beginning of the pandemic. Our world has changed fundamentally. There's no more normal. How we adapt to that may be the most important anthropological, social, political, psycho-emotional process we can undergo. So welcome, everyone. And now I want to turn it over to my distinguished colleague and good friend from Sweden, Sabina von Gafka, who will commence our program. Sabina.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you also once again for always your knowledgeable introductions to all sessions. And it truly is an interesting topic that we're going to dive into today. And I'm sure many of us are already acquainted with the concept of EQ, or emotional quotient, and its importance and use on both personal development, leadership, and also for developing workforces. But if we sort of fast forward to today, where change truly is, as Jim also said, and as many of us experience, constantly accelerating at speed, and where adaptability and even flexibility are traits that we need to cultivate both on an individual level, on a leadership level, and also on a societal level. And that's also why we're now seeing the rise of what is called the AQ, Adaptability Quotient, that looks a bit at the sort of factors between striving and thriving in the future of work, and also personal growth. And in today's session, we're going to dive deeper into AQ with people who are truly knowledgeable about this and have a real vast experience, both on knowing the concept of AQ, but also the whole part of measuring it and how to actually adapt it into the workforce. And especially today, where everything has transitioned into this new normal, with remote working and all of the possibilities that of course offers, but of course also the challenges, not least in sort of the fruition of this. And we're going to meet Ross Thornley and Mike Raven, who are both the co-founders of the company AQai, who will share their research and also the development journey on their validated model of AQ. And they're going to be discussing with partners Nancy Watt, that Jim just mentioned, and also Rafael Puerto, on how to begin applying AQ within leadership, businesses and teams, and also on an individual personal level to really overcome challenges, visualize and see the possibilities, expand support for mental health that is truly a rising challenge, not least with the remote working situation that we're in, and combat stress and anxiety, and also a really important factor Jim mentioned, enforcing our immune system, which of course also implies the well-being of one's workforce, one's team, employees, and so forth. And also talk more about how to understand adaptability, which is much about, how does a person react or respond to change? And it's usually sort of looked at from three different angles, the ability, the character, and then of course the environment that is around us and sometimes also imposed on us. So how do we change our thoughts and how do we change our behaviors in times of uncertainty? We've spoken about it many times in Humanity Rising, but it's always interesting to see it from different perspectives, and not least to really get on hands-on tools that both are based on measurement, but also on philosophy and, in a sense, common sense. And of course, this is also interesting to apply when it comes to leadership, because leadership is really in a transition where soft skills or transferable skills are spoken more and more about. A leader is there to also, ignite the potential of employees or humans in general, and also the necessity of trust and communication within teams and businesses, not least today when we have less interaction physically and more interaction digitally. And with that, I just want to mention a quote that Michael Raven mentioned, which is adaptability is a magic key to abundance. So we have EQ, IQ, AQ, and also SQ, spiritual quotient. And with that, I think we should take a heart coherence to tap into our spirituality, or not least tap into the present moment, open our minds, open our hearts, and be receptive for the conversation that is going to happen in the 1.5 hours we have ahead of us. So with some beautiful music in the background, let's just close our eyes, and with an inhale and exhale, we come into the presence here and now. And also remembering, especially as we're going to talk about adaptability and flexibility, is that, and constant change, is that we also need to realign. When change is constantly around us, just taking a few inhales and exhales is really that sort of key tool to aligning and just being centered when everything is, exponentially going at such a fast speed, and really to be more responsive as opposed to reactive when it comes to adaptability. And with that, I want to hand over the word to Ross Thornley and today's panelist for this session.
Thank you. And what a beautiful way to start a session. A really amazing experience to ground ourselves, to listen, to all come together in this place where we've come to be open in our hearts, in our minds, and with our ears as we go through. I feel very honored to be joined here by some very good friends of mine. And thank you, Jim, and everyone at the Humanity Rising event to welcome us. It's been a blessing to be here. As mentioned, we're going to be talking about adaptability. What is it? What is AQ? And how can this, in Mike's great words, be the key to abundance? One of the areas that we've been focusing on through a lot of our research and areas is one particular ability that's called resilience. So how can we actually build it? What can we do about that in order to thrive through whatever changes we have? So Mike, if you can bring up the deck for us, and I shall start to dive in and introduce some of my other panelists who'll be joining us for this conversation that we're going to have with you. Mike and I met about 8 years ago, and it was sometimes these events, you don't realize them until later, just how profound an effect that we can have on each other. And I'm happy to say that Mike was my best man at my wedding a couple of years ago. So it's been an 8-year journey of our business together, culminating in founding AQai, where we are really centered in our mission of leaving no one behind in this period of accelerating change. And it is about the health and well-being. And we're starting with 100 million people. How can we do that? Well, this is going to be through collaborations, with partnerships, and with a movement all around how do we successfully navigate this future of work, these roles that we currently have, what will we have tomorrow, and doing that through measuring and improving our adaptability at speed and at scale. So perhaps the way I want to frame this and for us to think about it, what if we could have confidence no matter what we were facing? Whatever the challenge, whatever level of uncertainty or certainty we face, whatever difficulty or whatever celebration, we can do that with confidence. How can we build that level of courage, have the commitment and the capabilities to be able to do that with poise, with help for our fellow citizens, for our fellow communities, in order to make sure that no one is left behind? As mentioned, Mike Raven is here as my co-founder. I'll let him to do a quick introduction as well before we go through the deck. And Nancy Watt from Canada, one of our practitioners in AQai, and also Rafael, who's calling in from Madrid as well. Yeah, future confidence in uncertainty. I think all of us would say yes, please, for that. So Mike, do you want to just give a little intro to yourself, and then we'll just do the same for Nancy and Rafael, and then take us through a bit of a journey and conversation.
Sure, thanks Ross, and hello everyone. It's such an honor to be here in such a strange year, and also coming towards the end of what is a truly game-changing piece of work that Humanity Rising have offered the world this year. So really humbled by this opportunity. Like Ross said, I'm his co-founder. We've worked together for many years, and we really put collaborations at the top of our list as we try and go about our missions, and this particular mission of improving the adaptability of 100 million people, and looking forward to the journey that we go on today.
Thanks, Mike. Nancy, do you want to come in and say hi to everybody?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Good morning. Hello, everyone. May I please say that this has been the fourth or fifth podcast in the last month, but that was the nicest, warmest, most inclusive type introduction that I've had. I've already been a fan of Humanity Rising for a while, but that was lovely. My name is Nancy Watt. I'm from outside Toronto, Canada. I run a creative agency that uses the tools and techniques of improvisational theater to explain evidence-based research into adaptability and communication and collaboration. And when I was introduced to Ross and Mike, it felt like that final piece of the puzzle, you know, that fit, that good fit. And so I am delighted to have invested my time and energy to understanding more about human adaptability and to play a very small part in the wonderful and audacious goal of helping those 100 million people. It's nice to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. And Rafael.
Hi everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. Really honored for joining you, all of you, to speak about something that I really and truly love. I'm working at my own agency that we are, everything that we do is regarding we're creating cultures in companies for fostering three main pillars, we could say, that are learning cultures, agility cultures, and also innovation or innovative cultures. So to me, adaptability, the AQai was something like, wow, this is what I needed since a long time ago. Today is my main tool for facing change. That is what I help companies to do. So it's a real pleasure and looking forward to what we're going to be discussing today. Thank you so much.
It's great. We're going to have some fun. We're going to share some of our thoughts, and please do ask questions, use the chat, and we'll go in flow and see as many as we can cover from there. We're also all very open people. One of our things is our mindset collaborations, that we're all accessible. We're all here to serve. And that's one of the highest callings. How can we serve each other in order to get somewhere that we want to go and design that? So I'm going to hand over to Mike to take us through a little bit of the background, some of the landscape and story of adaptability. And without any further ado, I think the floor is yours, Mike.
Thanks, Ross. Okay, so let's go on a short journey together, shall we? So the pandemic this year, and Jim spoke so eloquently, especially about the respect that's required for really what's happened this year. And you only need to look in the mirror. You only need to look around your own house, your own circle, to see what's really been going on. From, you know, the pressure to keep yourself in work or to seek work, the firefighting that's being required this year, both literally and metaphorically, and that's all major stress, you know, creating potentially this burnout. You know, it's when things get too much, when we're failing under the pressure of uncertainty and of disruption. Often people speak about volatility. There's such a dangerous opportunity for breakdown. We've been stuck inside, stuck at home, wherever home might be, or in bubbles. And it's been a year of survival. It's also been a year that's required incredible amount of patience, of requiring imagination, and of creation. And being stuck somewhere, and this idea of perhaps boredom as well, is a really dangerous place to be in, where the crisis of imagination and of creativity can really hit home. And these are all linked to adaptability and what we're going to talk about today. So for many companies, they've moved, to a world of being 100% remote, sometimes within 24 hours. And for many, it's likely to stay that way for some time. Jim mentioned earlier that this isn't going away anytime soon. For example, Twitter now will allow all of its employees to work from home forever. So it's forced this work from home experiment, and that in turn has had different impacts on different people. You just need to talk in your own circles to understand how different that spectrum is of this is the best time of my life compared to I'm isolated, I'm anxious, I'm socially disconnected, disconnected with the work I'm doing, the study that I'm doing, being left out. This is a really difficult year.
Mike, just to let you know, the slides aren't sharing. So if you want to reshare the slides.
Oh, okay. Let's have a look.
Hopefully if
It was taken off me. Are we
there
back?
you go. We're back in now.
Okay. Now it makes sense what I'm talking about. So this idea of, again, this social disconnection, isolation, it's really serious. And we have to start thinking next year about the next pandemic, which may be the one of mental health, which will be really important for us to be aware of. So I don't want to just read from the screen, but I want to let this sink in. So I'll give you a chance to read. Because the real fact is that our ability to adapt is there. It's innate in all of us. But how quickly and how deeply we can adapt is different. So there is a big risk of people being left behind. And that's one of the major causes of stress, anxiety, and this loss of courage and confidence. And it's one of our mentors, Dan Sullivan, who links courage and confidence to capability. So if we're looking to go on a journey of our skill sets, we need to have that courage and confidence. So I want to take it a step further, that this is actually even more serious than a pandemic. This epidemic of a lack of perhaps career adaptability, of mindset adaptation, of diminishing hope is really serious. And it was, we started this organization, this mission long before the pandemic. So I wanted to share with you now some examples on top of this unexpected year of why, in our opinion, the next 10 years will experience and see more change than in the last 100 years. So if your task can be automated, your current or maybe desired role is in danger of becoming a robot's role. So the question to ask is, are you having the right conversations with your future self? Are you learning the right skills? This is just an example of a retailer who replaced 90% of their staff with robots. We have the first bank operated entirely by robots in China. You may think, surely not my career, not my role. But I dare you to ask a really qualified futurist if you're focused on the right set of skills to secure your future success and your happiness. There's now AI that's beating lots of capable, highly capable, skilled humans in their roles. And these are all stories, these last three slides, that were actually from 24 months ago. So since then, investment in emerging technologies has skyrocketed even further. What if you're a celebrity? Well, that's even changing. A news anchor here who's completely a digital human. So there's so many roles and careers that are being disrupted. The way we learn, the choices of our most important learned skills, these essential human-only skills will become so important. These abilities that create the careers that we want, the jobs, the organizations, and the communities that we need on this planet will rely on these skills. And if we're looking to take, generative and regenerative action to prevent collapse and give ourselves the best shot at creating what this planet and all species deserve, then we need to really think about the types of very human skills that we're focusing on. I think in this quote, I would replace could with will. AI will have a more more profound implications for humanity. And it's why we need to be very conscious. There needs to be very ethical work in this field. And it's something that we use in our tools, and we feel like we're using it in the right way to embrace these types of changes in the right ways as technology accelerates.
Can I add a little bit in here, Mike, for people that are listening? Often I've been in conversations where this is seen as a versus. It's seen as a fight. It's seen where the immune system comes up to want to stop this progression, whatever the progression may be, whether it's technologically driven or something that feels unfamiliar. Our view, and Mike and I, as mentioned, was one about it not only being ethical, but about augmenting. So how in which all of these inert technologies can serve and help, and that we can augment to a better future. So there's no doubt people that are being left behind, that are in minorities, that aren't getting access to certain things, where technology can play a part in that. It can help reach those that are not reachable. It can help train and support those that haven't got access to these things. So for us, when we think about these artificial intelligences and all of these different converging technologies, where there's examples of it's versus, it was AlphaGo, it's the chess versus a chess master. Can the computer beat us? We've realized now there is a much better, brighter opportunity in which how can it augment us to go forward better in harmony? And those choices are the critical ones that the creators are making now. How are you all choosing to take technology and allow it to embrace in the right areas, in the right regenerative and sustainable ways? Takes clear decision making and also involvement from diverse groups in order to do that, which has been very important for us to do.
Absolutely. And I'll just add there that the group of organizations and collaborations that Ross and I have been involved in for some years is actually called Humanity Unite. So it's that unity that's so important to us. And, we haven't even started to mention digital humans yet, or digital twins, which is an emerging place where, you've got, for example, a company here called Soul Machines who are starting to introduce digital humans into their workforce. So there's this real, like Ross said, sense of augmenting new emerging technologies and opportunities for the future. This is one of my favorite quotes, and it's something that really launched what we were doing in adaptability. And for those that are, like me, Alice in Wonderland fans, I actually listen to Alice in Wonderland as a sleep story most nights on my Calm app, which helps me go to sleep. But make no mistake about it, the pace of change is faster than you think. And you have to look at yourself, you have to look at the people around you and say, can we keep up doing what we're currently doing? Or are we in danger of being left behind? So this is the reality. Lots of job change, an incredible amount of job change in the next 10 years. And you can see there in this chart, our adaptability is on a path. And unless there's an intervention to really improve our adaptability at speed and at scale, we are in danger of being left behind. The systems that we've got right now are not the ones that we need to get us to where we need to go. So it's new systems of education, of community, of government, of commerce, of health, of travel, of economics, new systems of our careers and how we think about our careers. We need this new operating system for change. So this is why we partner with organizations such as Ubiquity University and Humanity Rising. And it's, I think most people here on this session are here because of those same reasons. And, this process of change will be like surfing, a tsunami of change. So principles like experimentation, our imaginations, willingness to fail, to unlearn and to relearn will be critical, because we believe it's our job to ensure that adaptability is built into every facet of society as we move forward. So that sounds quite radical, and I think it's that radical change that's needed to not only survive and get through this change, but also to thrive. So organizations do require the most adaptable people we've ever seen. We've seen the evidence of that through talking to lots of CEOs and business leaders. They want their new recruits, their leaders, and their teams to be able to engage their imagination, to embrace change, to seek change, and develop these high capable skills of adaptability and AQ. So rather than just me talking, I wanted to set a little challenge and a few questions. So a simple exercise that you can do, as soon as perhaps we finish this session today. So I'd love you to write down these questions or take a screenshot. We will share these anyway at the end. But if you put this in the context of 2020, of what's changed, what's brand new, and what stayed the same, hopefully this will spark a really important conversation, not only to yourself, but also with those around you. It can be really powerful and a great conversation starter. And next after that comes 3 more questions. So to have a think about these and write them down of, what's been the impact for you on productivity from this year of 2020? What's been the impact on you of radical innovation? That could be yours, could be the people you work with or you collaborate with, and also your mental well-being. How's that been impacted this year? And to have that conversation again with people around you. And this is really a question that maybe some people can add to the chat. Some people can add to whether that's on Facebook or Zoom, etc. Do you have the skills, the adaptability, the resilience and the support to thrive in this exponential world? So how prepared do you feel for the next 1 to 3 years ahead? I'd love to understand some of those answers in the chat and start to pick some of those up. So these 2 words, take them forward with you. This opportunity that we have now to go forward better. Some people say be more human, but we tend to think be a better human. And then maybe one day we'll get to be and experience more than human. More compassion, more connected, more caring, more resilient, more adaptable, and more disciplined with our choices and our actions. Because this will transform our futures for positive regeneration. So what does adaptability, the word, and the concept mean to you? I'd love to see some comments in the chat about maybe a sentence or 2 about what it means to you. It's always great to see some of the ideas. And I'll share with you right now one of my favorite quotes. For anyone that's seen or the film Life of Pi, or who might have read the book, I'll read this. All living things contain a measure of madness that moves them in strange and sometimes inexplicable ways. This madness can be their saving. It is part and parcel with the ability to adapt. And without it, no species would survive. So I wanted to share that with you just as, just to show that we all have a different take on perhaps what adaptability means. But for us at AQai, this is our definition of adaptability and also our definition of AQ, which is the core and key metric of adaptability. So for AQ, it's about measuring the abilities, the characteristics, the environmental factors which impact the successful behaviors and actions of people and organizations to effectively respond to uncertainty, to new information, or to change circumstances. And it's in demand. I mentioned earlier, I think the number was 62% of CEOs out of a study of 1,500 this year said that adaptability was top of their list, but at the same time, it was one of their biggest challenges to find people with high adaptability. Partly because they can't see the proof of someone's adaptability, the proof of their AQ, to be able to invest in them. So one of our jobs is really to empower you with the skills and confidence to support you to thrive, no matter what challenge you face. And that's really where our model of adaptability comes in. And I'm going to share with you our model of adaptability quickly, so you can see our method and madness of what it is. Some of you may be familiar with the periodic table of elements from the days in science, and but for us it's the adaptiotic table. And I mentioned earlier it's the different core dimensions of adaptability. One is ability, one is character, and one is your environment. And I'll quickly touch on two of those, on the ability and the character, in a little bit more detail. So the ability to adapt is a personal skill. It's your resource. And there's different levels of mastery that can evolve over time. And these include grit, mental flexibility, your mindset, your resilience, and your ability to unlearn. And that resilience that we're talking about today, I'll quickly go into a little bit more detail on. It's that capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. So it's that bounce back ability. So when something negative happens, your ability to bounce back. How do you do that? How quickly can you do that? What happens to your mindset? And our character model includes things like emotional range, your extroversion or introversion, your hope, your motivation style, and your thinking style. So this character is almost your willingness of how and why someone adapts as an individual difference between people. And they're often different profiles that are stable over time. So it is slightly different to personality. So in terms of building AQ, how do we do that? And just like improving anything, so if you wanted to improve your fitness, you might see how quickly can I run the mile, and that would be your baseline. That's your data to see, okay, well, can I beat that next time? Can I learn to improve that? What skills can I get? Who can I train with to improve that speed and endurance? So we have an AQ assessment for an individual. So it looks at why you adapt, how and to what degree you adapt, when you adapt, whether you're change seeking or perhaps change avoiding in some way, and things like how well you can learn, how well you can unlearn, and reskill as these exponential times take a grip. So going back to that question again of how prepared for the future could you be if you developed your AQ? So you answered earlier, how ready are you now? How prepared are you now? But if you developed your AQ over, say the next 3 months at least onwards, how prepared for the future could you be, in your opinion? So I'd again love to see some of those answers and how they've changed maybe over the last 10 or 15 minutes of that confidence of something can be done. I can improve myself as an individual to face uncertainty, face challenges, bounce back stronger, and deal with a rapidly changing and accelerating world. So Ross mentioned this earlier, and I'll share it with you again and put it on the screen. It's our massive transformational purpose, our MTP, we call it. Simon Sinek would call it our big why. And it's to unlock the secrets of human adaptability, ensuring no one is left behind in the fastest period of change in history. And this is really interesting because then there's some scientific evidence now to say, if you're in a group of 100 people you just need just over 3 of those people to be aligned with how you think and feel about something and the action that we feel we need to take. So I think that's a really important measure, to say just over 3% of people need to get together in a movement to make something really happen and take hold for the rest of those 97 people. So if you take that on a global scale, if we were able to shift the needle of adaptability on over 100 million humans, that'll reach more than half of the whole population. And then who knows what will happen. We have an opportunity to make this civilization and this biosphere really thrive again. We are big advocates of the global goals, so supporting things like quality education, infrastructure, good jobs, decent jobs, and economic growth. So that's a really important part of us, and there may be some of this community who are aligned, so we'd love to be involved in that conversation. And we also wanted to share something with you, with this community, as we come to the end of a really challenging year. Our AQ assessments are, they cost investment to create, and it's been 2 or 3 years of research and development in this. And you'll see on our website that it does cost an individual to discover their AQ, but we've made it complimentary with this code for this whole audience, because we feel it's so important to go into 2021 with knowledge of our adaptability. And inside our platform, we do share insights, individual insights on how to improve your adaptability, that you can personalize, because we're all different. We all have a different AQ. There's a huge number of numbers that are possible out of 900, which is the score of your AQ. So I'll pass back now to Ross, and we'll open some questions and get the panel involved.
Thank you, Mike. And before we go to panel and questions, I really want this to sink in terms of Jim opened up with the virus needing respect. When something comes along and our circumstances change, how do we think? How do we behave? And what do we do? Is that the burning platform that we needed to be the most creative version of ourselves? Or was it something that tipped us over the edge, that took us into a dark room where we need some help? We need some support. This is what really matters to us, and why we talked about making this complementary. We've invested a number of years with some of the top research and scientists around the world to put together something that we believe will serve humanity for decades to come, to help us through these moments that we can't even imagine yet, what we might face. But our hope is that we can do it with compassion and support by understanding who, why, and how we adapt, to make sure that we can do it on our terms, be able to unlearn and say goodbye, say thank you to a past service, technology, or company that no longer is relevant for the world we're creating tomorrow, rather than that happening without us knowing, with being caught by surprise, being upset about it, that we can do it on our terms. What I'd like to do is, and there's been a couple of questions that have come in, but before we do that, I'd just like to invite Nancy and Rafael back in. And if we start with Nancy, just to give us a little bit of your journey and some of the real experiences of how, as a pracademic, taking academic research into practical skills and this joy that you bring with improv. Perhaps you could share just some stories of how is this landing with your clients, that are facing challenges in diversity and inclusion or in leadership. Just take us through a journey of the real world from that, Nancy, for a little bit. Be great to hear.
Oh, thank you, Russ. thoroughly enjoy listening to Mike and Ross. They sort of speak my language, and may I say, so did Jim. I come from the world of improvisational theater. I am a conservatory graduate of Second City in Toronto and Chicago. The underlying principle of improv are two words called yes and. Yes and means that we accept the reality that has been created for us on stage and is our contribution to heighten and advance the scene. Now, while that may sound a little bit simplistic, I guarantee you it's not, and something that Jim did beautifully when we were chatting before this webinar started, and I spoke of the conversation that I had with the epidemiologist, and he said, you know, we should respect this virus. Look at the cascade. Look at what this has done to our global community. And indeed, he yesed that and ended it beautifully. The agency that I run needs to pass the test of two things. You know, the work that we do needs to be both true and good. And that is what struck me immediately when I landed upon AQai and met Ross and Mike and have been having enriched conversations with them ever since. Where my clients are grateful and what is really resonating for them when we have a conversation about adaptability is that fit. You know, I mean, because adaptability shows up in so many facets of their lives, and indeed the research that has gone into building this quotient with ability and character and environment is the body of all of the social science that I have been working with for a decade. You know, it is a skill to be both concise and thorough, and that's what this adaptability really seems to be landing. That it gives them the metric from which they can springboard into action. Because if it be true that we will see more change in the next 10 years than we have in the last 100, and appreciating the fact that that is really hard for many people to wrap their heads around, you know, what they know, what they intuitively know, and what they feel is that indeed the on-ramp is short. There is not a lot of time to get up to speed with our own adaptability. And I'll tell you that there was this quote, you know, that really resonated with me and that I see in people in organizations like Humanity Rising and AQai. And it's a quote from Mr. Rogers. You know, Mr. Rogers? So he once said, when I was a little boy and I would see scary things in the news, my mother would always say to me, look for the helpers. There are always helpers. And AQ is a helper. Humanity Rising is a helper. You know, I am, when I, in a pracademic way, which means taking academic research and applying it practically, experientially, through the connection and laughter and creativity, because research shows that is how humans love to learn. I want to be a helper. I want to be able to say to my children and grandchildren that this is what I did. This is how I contributed. There was an old man that I knew and loved in my life, and he was an eternal optimist, you know. And one day I said to Ivan, how is it that you are able to keep your glass half full? And Ivan said to me, well, am I pouring or drinking? And I love that. I love that. When I am pouring, when I'm contributing, when I am building to a solution of our global pandemic or being of service to another, the very process of serving through laughter and creativity, well, my glass always looks half full, you know. But if I am here to take or demand or expect things to come my way, you could never give me enough, and I'll my glass is half empty. So it is this movement of a social contagion. I love the 3%, Mike. I love that. There is we are in a movement that can quickly cascade, and we get to serve and help others. Ross mentioned D&I. I do a lot of work in the diversity and inclusion space, and it is my experience that it intrigues me that a lot of the research of organizational initiatives into diversity and inclusion are not resulting in the necessary behavioral change. The dangerous movement afoot is that we are learning what to say and what not to say, but not moving the behavioral dial. And so the concept, the research of ability to adaptability, for me, there's a great interest and curiosity around unlearning. It is our organizations and individuals have gone through that they have not experienced the necessary discomfort that we must bear in order to unlearn. And so luckily for me, when I put a group through applied improv, I've yet to meet individuals who are entirely comfortable with that process, and we build this not a safe place, but a brave place in order to withstand that discomfort and to see more. That is the beauty of improvisational theater, creativity, and imagination, that we see more. We see more and appreciate different perspectives and points of views, and are able to nudge our own bias in a necessary way. The beauty of unlearning gives us that gift. And from there, I'm able to work on my own adaptability. And there's this workshop that we do that looks at white privilege, and it's called a woke shop workshop. And it nudges us necessarily that way too. We have much work to do, and I'm so grateful to play a small part in it, Ross. Thanks.
And it's fascinating, isn't it? These conscious choices, when we learn something, what do we do with that information? Does it resonate with something I believed before and therefore see it as true? Is it part of my echo chamber and my biases? Does it conflict with that? Do I need to unlearn actively the old bit of information to make room for the new one? Or does it fight inside my head? This mental flexibility to hold opposing thoughts and not end up in a padded cell. There's each of these challenges that we face through life. A life worth living is going to be one faced with challenge, excitement, energy, and change, as much as it is loss and fear. And this poetic dance that we have is our adaptation. Are we looking to adapt others to ourselves, or ourselves to others? Our environment to ourselves, or us to the environment? All of this, beautiful friction points and balance, again, come to choices, our mindset. What are we feeding it? How are we feeding it? And what I want our audience to really think about is our AQ is not fixed. It's not one of these personality profiles that labels somebody, that categorizes them, that in one way limits them. Think of it more like your weight. When you stand on the scales, you can then decide, where do I want that needle to be? What's the context and goal I'm looking for? And then I start to learn about my nutrition and exercise. Our AQ is the same. Our ability to adapt and help others. What's our context and goal? What's our vision for our future self? And then what do we need to do in order to meet that? Rafael, come on in and weigh in with some of your experiences and perhaps some of your own journey of adaptation and some of the clients that you're supporting through this process.
Well, I could say that this started to me, this journey, like seriously 4 years ago, even though I'm involved in HR consultancy for 15 years, almost, more or less, helping companies through changes and business changes, agility, all this stuff. 4 years ago, I started to think about how would we, or which skills or capabilities will we look at when we are going to try to select and develop professionals for jobs that doesn't even exist. So brand new jobs that are appearing all the time, how would we make search and selection and also make development for professionals in that field? And I started to think and build my own, what I call the future-proof skills. No, that should be a skill that, to me, I'm an industrial engineer, dedicated to the talent world, but I'm an industrial engineer, and the few things that are remaining in me are that I need to measure everything, you know, nice tools, good tools, reliable, and all this stuff. And I have 5, and one of them was change agility, because to me change was everything, and I didn't have this AQai tool, unfortunately, in my previous years. So I started facing these changes, this process of change in the company, in the companies that I help, like measuring. Okay, I always make the question like something like, okay, who is going with you in this journey? Who is going to you, and where are you going? So you're facing the unknown. So how are you going to be developing the people that you need? Because you're speaking to me to changing the processes or changing tools or changing technologies, but what about people? What are the people that are going with you? So I started measuring all this stuff. Well, I can tell you that to me are emotional intelligence, or for sure, leadership agility, learning agility, creative problem solving, and once upon a time was change agility. From 1 year now, adaptability quotient, or the AQI tool, is for me the main tool that I'm starting to speak with people with a really nice acceptance in my clients, as you already know. And I feel that it's something that I truly believe that is the next big and huge wave for the coming future. I don't know if you want me to give you more details, but this is my journey, and how did I arrive in your hands that I love.
And, you know, we've had a few questions come in, and I want to start to invite our audience to do just the same. And for us, as we're getting more and more data, you know, we've had lots of people from all around the world. We've had users, I think now, from about 55 different countries, from organizations as diverse as the United Nations, through to tech companies, through to, I think, Nancy, you're using it with some nuns as well.
They
you were
are
telling
just
me.
so cool. They
Yeah.
are. Yes, we do. We have a compilation of different faith leaders, and we've got rabbis, imams, native elders, nuns, and reverends and Unitarians, and they're coming together, and they love this. Go figure. I mean,
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
And it is this opportunity for us all to give ourselves permission to dream, permission to think about something that could be different in the future. I remember reading a case study and a story, and they were telling me about computers. And computers was the name of a job. That was a profession. So you'd look in the press under the recruitment section, and there would be a job title called computers. Now, where we sit, there'll be many generations that for them, it's a box. It's a physical engineering thing, not a job. How many jobs today are defined by a word that in the future might be defined by a physical object or even a piece of software? So it might transition into a physical object of maybe a robot or something. I know every time I say, oh, are you going to do the hoovering? And my wife corrects me and says, no, that's the vacuum cleaning, because the Hoover was a brand. And these words become synonymous with something. It's not hoovering, it's vacuum cleaning. Our job, customer service, it's not customer service. That might be a piece of software. It might be done by a digital entity of the future. So for all of us, who we are today doesn't mean that we take that forward to tomorrow. Each morning we wake up, we can redesign ourselves, redesign the kind of futures, the kind of jobs. And in order to do that, we need to know what has been successful. And there was a great question of what can we learn from the successes or failures of past cultures, and those that succeeded and those that have not, survived? What can we learn from the wisdom of our ancestors that helped through these navigations of huge change? And I wonder if, open to any of the panelists, their thoughts on that of, you know, what have we learned in the past and how can we take that forward?
I'd love to jump in on this if I can, Ross. I think a lot of our research took us to the past, and during times of instability, all the way through to civilizations that go through huge periods of instability. When they reach their limits, they begin to fall. They seek certainty, that comfort in certainty. They seek and crave the status quo. And, just at that point where the really forward-thinking decision-making processes are highly relevant, and the need to adapt is fundamental, they become actually increasingly inflexible and resistant to change. Where if you look at some of the biggest civilizations of the past, if you look at the Romans, if you look at the Egyptians, Babylon, etc., Babylonians, there's a pattern that repeats itself. And that's this civilization reaching its precipice and then doubling down on what it's already done. Something, significant and, in terms of change that was unexpected approaches them, and they look for that status quo. And I think it's such an important question that Jane raised there of that wisdom from the past and the failures of cultures and civilizations of the past that we need to take into account to understand and learn from. Because simply if we try and do more of what we've always done, we'll get what we've always got. And for all of those civilizations, and any historians amongst us will know, the connecting factors, they each went into quite long dark ages because they failed to adapt. They failed to do things radically different. And, so for us, connecting to organizations like, for example, 8 Shields, and, where they collect the wisdom of the tribes and ancestors of the past, those things are really important. So this isn't just a very economic, business related, career related, ongoing project. This is an ongoing project, but it encompasses so much more.
It's a human one.
It's even beyond human. It's our whole biosphere. We know, some of the challenges we're facing with the climate as well. So I think it's a really important note, and something we're building, for example, the AQ Research Council, to include a huge number of and diverse number of people and organizations, from these very diverse groups, so such as 8 Shields, academia, business, government, the non-profit organizations. There's a huge amount of collaboration that's required, and it'll be a never-ending research mission to keep furthering our ability to adapt, even to the point that there's now a university team over in the States who have claimed to have discovered the AQ gene in humans. So there's, it's a really important and giant world to maneuver, and something we can't do by ourselves. When we set about our mission, we knew that it would take radical collaboration to do so.
I'd like to add a couple of points, Nancy, if I may. So if anyone is interested, we created a little mini documentary film, and Jim kindly came to our world premiere in September, and we can share the link in the chat, and maybe for others that are live through other mediums, you can find it, Adaptability and the Future of Work, on YouTube. It's about 11 minutes long. It's by an Emmy Award-winning director, and it's just this opportunity to have conversation, to emotionally connect to what does this really mean. And I want us to think about our choice in change. And a lot of it depends on the intensity of that change. So when we seek, as Mike mentioned, stability, one of the things that happen is that we absorb it. We cope. We cope with that change, and we want to maintain the stability of the system that exists. We need perseverance for those things. We need grit. We need determination in order to protect what we currently have. And that absorbative, that coping capacity can be very useful, can be very helpful when an intensity and a change happens. When that's overwhelmed, we then transition into an adaptive capacity. So this is where we make an incremental adjustment. That's where we need flexibility. That's where we take what existed, a new requirement, internally or externally, has happened, and we adapt in order to survive in that situation. So we shift from coping to surviving. Then when that reaches its capacity, what then happens is transformational change. That again can come from internal, a desire, a new vision of ourselves, or it can be external, a burning platform. So this difference between burning ambition or a burning platform. And that transformational response requires an equal amount of energy. So the level and intensity of that change, we need the level of energy in order to respond to a transformational shift. So that's not just for individual or team or organization. So when we look at this on scale, the organizations that are often talked about that find it hard to change because they're a tanker, they can't move because they have so much of their governance, of their compliance, of their risk. The structure of innovation is to protect, to exploit what they have already, to explore new, to transform is a different set of skills, a different set of emotions, a different set of teamwork. And it's why often we have these little sand pits and these little areas where people go, as Nancy calls it, the brave space, where we can go and try on new things and experiment within them to maybe increase our muscles of our transformative capacity. So think of your adaptability as a cycle of consistent movement, so that we absorb, we create, something comes across, we cope, then we maybe adapt and we survive, then we grow. But at some point we need to transform, to thrive. And it will go forward through, as Mike said, throughout history, that things come back to the full circle of coping and then surviving and growth and transformation. If we can do that on the terms with minimal damage, that's the kind of world I'd love to be a part of and to create. So Nancy, you wanted to offer some thought in to this.
You did it beautifully. I was just going to reference the wonderful documentary that has dealt so succinctly with that, and two things in different workshops that I've done recently around adaptability this week. I deal in the currency of comedy and human connection and laughter and being able to learn in that environment. Victor Borge said this shortest distance between two people is laughter. And comedians, Comedy 101 is for comedians to prepare an opposing perspective, right? And so I loved what Mike shared around the certainty and humans needing to drop anchor there. We like that. We like to know what we know. And comedy in society through the ages, cross-culturally, acts as talking about that which is not necessarily taboo, but often the case, but giving us that different perspective and entering the door of that uncertainty and allowing us to start to learn to unlearn and inviting that adaptability. And that is, and again, so much of what we are able to deliver to my clients and to me in AQ gives us that invitation to do so. And then quickly in my holy improv group, the rabbi said, the opposite of faith is not disbelief. The opposite of faith is certainty. When we are certain, there is no room for wonder. There is no room for God or spiritual curiosity. It is indeed embracing that uncertainty and allowing ourselves to be adaptable that is ultimately part of faithfulness.
got a quick question for you, Nancy, that's come in from Dr. Mora. And it's, Nancy, how challenging has it been to bring applied improv to this digital Zoom format? Limitations, or has it opened up new possibilities for sharing, revealing, connection?
What a wonderful question. Thank you. Part of what happened to me was that I needed a stage to be built. So I, along with a quick tech startup, we developed something called a Lightboard, and Lightboard Depot allows me to deliver the very same type of interactive and dynamic workshops that I can do live. And thank God, many of the improv exercises translate well online. I'll share with you that we have been undergoing a clinical trial here at McMaster University, which is Canada's most research intensive university, to lower social anxiety symptomology with a 12-week improv boot camp for inner city youth. And when the pandemic hit, I could no longer meet with these wonderful creative humans, and so we continued online, and we decided to call our group not attention deficit disorder but connection deficit disorder. And they are it has evolved in an amazingly effective ensemble group online. And every single week when I meet these youth at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon to end my week, we talk about one different aspect of adaptability. And I am so immensely grateful to AQai for giving them that opportunity to explore their creativity and adaptability that way. So long story short is, thank God I've been able to be a little bit adaptable, because it really does work well online.
And I've got a question for you, Rafael, in terms of, you talked about working with leadership and within larger organizations. What have been some of the challenges and how have you overcome them in talking just about adaptability? You know, has that been something that they've come to you seeking, or has there been another challenge of innovation or something else in which you've said, this is where adaptability comes? So how have the conversations been happening with leaders in organizations and where you intersect with your work?
Well, it's a question that we could be talking about for 4 weeks in a row, non-stop. So making a long story short, I would say that they are not yet aware about that. You know, what I'm facing, big companies, because I'm working with really big companies, that they heard some things, they hear some things, they listen to some sounds of change and all this stuff, but they don't know what to do. And to be honest, Ross, is that they don't want to. So they are asking for changes, leaders, CEOs. I want to say CEOs or CHRO. That is my main, the main people that I talk to. And they asked me to set programs or set development programs for others, not for them. So we are facing their, an inconsistent. They are not consistent with what they preach. Of course they don't want to talk. So it's being really tough. So nowadays, the last week, to be honest, I had an intervention with a steering committee, and I used the AQai tool. And was really nice how you can uncover a lot of things just reflecting on the environment side of the tool, of the report. Yeah, and how can you discover, even though you don't know them, how can you discover human dynamics inside between the CEO and the people and the peers and so on. So it's something brand new. Not a lot of people know, as you know, this is something really new, as I'm saying.
Pioneering.
So yeah, it's really new. So nobody's asking me, please, we need to improve our adaptability quotient, but I want you to know that for the next year, the first quarter, I have like 3 really big change programs that we are going to use as a tool to check the culture, the AQI.
Fantastic.
This is going to be the main tool we're going to be using, is that. And the companies are starting to believe in it.
It's interesting. Listening to you, Rafael, a cartoon came into my head, and it's two queues, and it's a queue, and on the first one it says, "Who wants change?" and it's full, and there's loads of people who've all got their hands up, and the next one says, "Who wants to change?" and it's
nobody.
tumbleweed, and it's empty. And this is
Yeah.
the reality that we live in, right? Is that we, how can we in our mirror see ourselves? And a lot of this is designed by the vision we have, our future identity, and having conversations with that person as a different entity, seeing it as a new person that you can create. And this is, I think, the beauty that the tool starts to meet at, starts to pick away at potentially some of these deeply inground bits of identity that for some is just being shifted without us realizing, without us knowing. And as many on the panel have already said, this, desire for certainty. How can we skip with joy and smiles in uncertainty? And I think that is adaptability's opportunity. And the conversation that can come in through a different framing, through different ways in which we can position things of each of these dimensions that are all scientifically validated in a way in which we can improve them. What a beautiful opportunity that is for all of us in our lives to be able to feel childlike again, irrelevant of our age, to design a future that's always bigger than our past, as Dan Sullivan puts it. So Jim, I'm conscious of our timing. We've come in at, we're an hour and 20. If you can give us some steer for the end piece to get maximum value for everybody, it really has been a pleasure to share this panel and stage on your community, and hopefully there's value that's been exchanged in a way in which will lift all of us for a better tomorrow.
Great. Thank you so much, Ross. And I'm just wondering, Sabina, is there anything you would like to comment on quickly as we wrap this up for today?
I mean, there was so much both wisdom, but also really hands-on suggestions and tools that we're giving here today. So I think the summary has been so well done. And I also, the hen and the egg here is a bit what both Ross and everybody said, is that I think many of us sort of understand the concept or the traits of adaptability, but it's sort of integrating this into leadership and into companies and really walking the talk is always where, there's a bit of an Achilles heel. So I also really, the encouragement of all of these conversations and also bringing people together and also having the assessment tools like the AQ assessment tool is really the navigator to how we start to implement these tools or forces of change, because the solutions are out there. We know that. It's now up to humans, individuals, leaders, and companies to really, that question that I think Ross also said, who wants change? Hey, we do, but who wants to change? And that's probably because we fear what change might imply, because being in the constant is what we think is our security. So, and also working with leaders and hosting leadership workshops, that is sort of the imperative challenge of really getting this to be the next line of how we not only adapt to change, but really the adaptability that we have within the core of ourselves as individuals. It always starts with us, and then handing the torch over to someone else, whether it's our teams, employees, or human to human. And as there have been so many quotes that have been said here, there was just one that sort of came to mind, and yes, it's Albert Einstein who said it, that the measure of intelligence is the ability to change. And also intelligence is creativity, having fun. So
I love that. I just noticed a quick question that came in from somebody, Franz Bluim, I think. I find at age 80, it difficult to adapt to losing my abilities and to find something to adapt to isolated in my apartment. And he goes on. And I wanted to share something to you, Franz, and it's a mentor and coach of mine who's in his late 70s. Mike and myself have mentioned his name, Dan Sullivan, a couple of times. And I'd encourage you to check out one of his little books. So this little book here, it's called My Plan for Living to 156. And as an individual, he at 75 created his 25-year plan, his vision for his next 25 years, which included writing a book every quarter. And he's published lots of books, lots of pieces. And it links a little bit to hope. Hope is composed of three elements. We have to have vision. We have to have a goal, something that we're striving for. So for you at 80, what is your vision and goal that you're striving for? Is it grandchildren? Is it to be at a point where your isolation, you're here? You've used this transportation system called Zoom to come and join us and be in the same room as us. So when we have vision, we need two other things. We need to have a pathway. We need to have the strategies in which to get there, and then the skills in which to do it, the agency. When we have those components, we have hope. So pick them off one at a time. Look for what is your vision. What are you doing in the next phases of today, of tomorrow? Maybe even give yourself permission to think 25 years. What if? Beautiful question, that what if. And then the skills and some pathway with others to help you achieve it there. That if you believe it's possible, then that's your best first start. So yeah, it's my plan for living to 156, somebody with the most energy, most creativity. And it's a myth that the older you are, the less adaptable you are, certainly from our data.
Yes, and also if I can just quickly add to that, there's different movements all over the world. One I'm involved in is called Journeyman, and it's about bringing young teenage boys specifically together with elderly men and mentoring each other, because it goes both ways. It's a mentoring talent exchange of different views of the world to understand different perspectives. And yeah, these are starting up all over the world, and I think it's a bit like transition towns. If you've heard of transition towns, you pick up one movement, try and start it, be that person to start it in your locality, and it spreads. Different nodes pop up, and the network changes.
Good. Well, thank you. Great thought, everyone. In the midst of the pandemic, let's all commit to living to be 156. That will call forth the adaptation instinct.
It sure will.
In all of us. I can't tell you, Ross, Mike, Rafael, Nancy, brilliant, beautiful session. And I just in a closing comment, just to underscore the gravity of what we've discussed today, it's just worth noting Arnold Toynbee's masterwork, probably one of the great historians of all time, and certainly one of the great historians of the 20th century, Arnold Toynbee, British historian, who did a life study on the 23 civilizations that we know about that have endured on this earth. And he studied the rise and fall of civilizational systems. And he pointed out that almost universally, they start with some kind of creative minority that has a vision. And through various vicissitudes of fate and circumstances, seize power, either off the residue of an old system or conquering a new space, but consolidates and brings an ethos into the world and into a structure. And that creative minority becomes the center, sort of like the hub of a wheel of a civilization or an empire. And they endure and they grow, but every civilization rises and falls. So Toynbee spent a lot of time trying to figure out what is the nexus of the fall. You know what he said it was? They lose their capacity to adapt. They lose what he calls their elasticity. and they become ossified. And then when a invader shows up at the periphery, or something happens internally, an economic depression or a pandemic, more than one civilization has been felled by a pandemic. They don't have the elasticity to respond, and they fall. Now, this is important in relationship to what another great historian, William Durant, if you've read his 15-volume Story of Civilization, he makes the comment that empires and civilizations don't die. They commit suicide. And this is a very deep observation, everyone. We are all now going through the pandemic. The pandemic has seized everyone. There's no more neutral ground. There's nobody outside the pandemic. The pandemic is challenging us. It's eradicated our norm. And it's been uncomfortable at every level. And it's digging in. It's digging in. How we now adapt, how we develop our AQ could be the most important challenge of the hour. 30 years ago, it was about EQ, emotional intelligence. But it's about AQ now, ladies and gentlemen. And you can see in major countries, even take the United States. The United States is teetering on collapse in many ways. Why? Because it's lost its elasticity. It's lost its ability to adapt. It's lost its vision of who it is. And you start going through that suicide, because it's not being done by the outside in. Adaptation, adaptivity is the inside out. And as you all were saying, it's a complex process of taking in, assessing, culling, responding, processing, reaching a new level of understanding, and immediately adapting, responding. It's a perpetual process of conscious change. Because the organism has the internal flexibility to shapeshift. So Mike, Ross, you founded an incredible company, man. And Ubiquity looks forward to
lots of
collaborating with you folks in any way that we can, because we're building our UB Pass, our competency-based passport, at the center of which is soft skills, and it's all about adaptation. So I really want to thank you. I really want to thank you for this presentation. This was seminal, and I just want to acknowledge that. I want to invite everyone to join the after session chat. The link will be in the chat box. It's been put up a couple of times, but we look forward to having you join us. And then just went up. Just to say that tomorrow, we're going to be talking about adaptation and resilience in the corporation. John Montgomery is convening a whole session. He's convened several other sessions on the green swan and on various other new phenomena that are bursting up in the economic and business sector. So we're going to have a session following up on AQ. We're going to go specifically into the corporation and find out how the corporations are shape-shifting as we move through the pandemic. into a completely new world. So thank you, everyone. This has been marvelous. And we'll see you again tomorrow, same time, same station, 5:00 p.m. Central European Time, here on Humanity Rising. Bye for now.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Well done, man.